muscles of we
allow us to journey into these altered states.
It really whacked me psyche though, big time.
If you just sit reading books, it's the shadow because you're not going to be in your body.
Welcome to Creating Space, bringing people together. Real conversations with real people, telling stories and sharing our gifts right here in the heart of Liverpool, inspiring new ideas, education and co-creation.
Choose a challenge that lights you up and is going to make a difference in the world.
Creating Space.
Sponsored by the Scouts Guru app.
Okay, welcome back to this platform, Creating Space. My name's Martin Bowen, and this is episode 20. I was driving here and I'm with my good friend today who we're going to be interviewing, and just been contemplating today about some of these conversations that we've been having. And I remember the very first conversation was with my father, and that was, we had that just as lockdown was coming on to us in March 2020. And so this is the 20th episode, and I think I've really enjoyed how I've grown through these processes, and the intention behind these conversations is just to get real people, telling real stories, because we've all got a story to tell, and really get under the skin with this stuff. I've been fascinated by the human experience for quite some time, and I've got a great guest in today, and we've had some wonderful conversations over the last couple of years, and especially over the last year. So I'm looking forward to diving into that today. So I'd like to welcome my good friend. His name is David Lyon. Mr. Lyon, good evening.
Hello, Mr. Bone.
How are you? Thank you for coming on. I know we've been sort of threatening to get you on the on the platform for maybe about 6 months, but it just feels
I've
right.
Been shying away from it. I've been hiding away. But no, you've managed to get me here.
Yeah, just feels right. It's a good time of year.
It does.
It's January 2022.
Yeah.
We've just come in the car. It's absolutely disgusting with the weather outside, isn't there?
Horrible.
But
it's nice and warm in here.
It's lovely warm. A good shout out to me mate Jacob, who's the host here. So I think obviously I'm really excited to get under the skin and to hold some space for you today, Dave, and ask some probing questions about what it is that you're going to be sharing. We've had some wonderful conversations especially over the last year, and I'd like to think that we're deepening our connection, our friendship.
Very much.
And them conversations I always loved having, about about all matters related to the human experience, philosophy, mythology, astrology.
Yeah.
And we've had some really far out conversations, whatever that may be, obviously COVID, flat earth,
all of it.
aliens,
Yeah.
And so far, I just want to let you know I've loved every conversation we've had, and I love how it just allows to go. There's no judgments, you know what I mean, and we've had some good times together, and we just share man time, isn't it? You know what I mean? I think it's really important for me to share that time with men, and having a couple of beers.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really grateful that you're here. I know you've got a lovely story to tell, and it's always for the benefit of the listener as well. Anyone listening to this and tuning in today into this episode 20, put your feet up, or get the kettle on and just relax and enjoy this conversation, because I know this man's got some gifts that I'm really looking forward to leaning into. So first and foremost then, David, let's talk about, because you're back in Liverpool.
Yeah.
You've been living in London, haven't you?
Yeah.
For a number of years, and you've been an actor, and that's been a big part of your life. You're a Liverpool lad. You were born in Liverpool.
Yeah.
You live up on Calder Stones Park. You went to school here, and then that sort of took you into the acting career, and so on and so forth. So let's sort of go back in time then a little bit and tell us a little bit about life in Liverpool as growing up for you, and how you got into the acting.
Well, so I'll start with my first memory, actually.
Nice.
Seems like a good place to begin. But I can remember being about, I guess I was like 3 or 4. and I'm running through this courtyard somewhere in Europe on holiday with my parents, and there were these lamps shaped like mushrooms. And I don't know if you remember the seminal 80s TV show My Little Pony.
Yeah.
Which, if I remember correctly, it was about this collective of like flying horses. But they had this friend who was like a shaman who lived amongst the mushrooms called Mr. Moochik.
Oh, nice.
Right. So I was like 3 or 4, and I could see these lamps shaped like mushrooms, and I was searching for Mr. Moochik, calling out Mr. Moochik, Mr. Moochik. But I was convinced I was going to find him because I absolutely believed, magic was real.
Yeah.
I was all about the mythical. I wasn't interested in, as a kid, I wasn't interested in sport.
Yeah.
I wasn't into football. I was into, to be honest, I was into wrestling. You know, The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan.
Oh, yeah.
The sort of anything larger
Royal
than
Rumble,
life.
yeah,
The Royal
WWF,
Rumble, man.
It was a big part of, like, I think a young child's life, especially if you were a lad. Do you know what I mean? It was massive, wasn't it?
And I think I just loved those kind of characters that were just sort of channeling some kind of archetypal energy.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in the mundane, and obviously I was quite a shy kid. My parents got some really good advice to basically, try and bring me out of my shell, get me into acting classes, drama. And that's where I really sort of found myself. But as I was going through school, I had 2 parents who achieved a lot, with their careers professionally. And there was definitely an expectation for me to do the same.
Yeah.
Go to university, get a good degree, get a good job. And I just knew I didn't have that in me. And I knew I wasn't of the same intellect as them. I wasn't academic in that
logical
way.
sort of rigid maybe side of
I didn't have that ability to sit down and read a book and then kind of regurgitate and do the essays. And, and I can remember getting to like 16 years old. I was down for A-levels to do history, Latin, English lit. I can't remember what the 4th one was, but it was something that was going to require academic application.
Yeah.
And I knew I just didn't have it in me. And I remember going, I didn't have that many friends, to be honest, but I remember going to the library and I was pretending to read the newspapers, and I said the prayer. By that point, I'd say that I'd had the kind of belief in the magical kind of beaten out of me by everyday life, by school, by society,
Yeah. And it can be a confusing time then, can't it? Because you're almost trying to find your way again, aren't you?
Exactly,
thinking, who am I? What do I like? Who's my tribe? Who are my mates? Do you know what I mean?
And just knowing
what's next for me.
Yeah, well, that was it. I can remember like just feeling like I could see where life was heading, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And it's not that I've completely respected my parents and what they had achieved, but I just knew I didn't have that in me, and I was like, how am I going to? I'm going to fail my A-levels.
Yeah.
I know I am. I'm going to embarrass my parents. I'm going to have wasted all the opportunities they've afforded me. Yeah. What the hell am I going to do?
But there's a lot of pressure there as well, though, isn't there?
A lot of pressure, which was probably more me putting it on me.
Yeah.
As well as, teachers at school. But nevertheless, I said this prayer and I was like, God, get me out of this, please, because we all know where this is going and I can't do it, so get me out of it. And then about 4 weeks later, I ended up, doing an audition for, there was a TV show in Liverpool at the time called Brookside. And, about 3 months after that, many rounds of auditioning later, I got the job. And then I was an actor, right? And, I'm on the television, I'm getting paid money. My parents couldn't tell me then I needed to go to university. And, same like with teachers, it was like, this is who I am.
So that was about 16, was it?
I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing experience.
Yeah. And how long had you been acting before that?
So, I'd been doing drama classes since like 5 or 6.
Yeah, so...
there was a few years where I stopped doing anything like that. And then, funnily enough, when I was 14, I had a falling out with some friends at school. And... I think it was my mother again. She kind of, she could see that I was having problems and she got me into some Saturday drama classes. And it was through that I basically, got into this audition.
Nice.
And so...
Did you realise you were that good? Did you know you were that good to...
I think I knew I think I knew I was good, actually.
Yeah.
I knew I had something. particularly on stage. I mean, this was one of the interesting things was, you know, I'd been doing these youth amateur plays, and I could sense when I was on stage a power.
Yeah. Like the zone, you were in flow.
Flow,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I watched myself back on TV and I was like, oh my God, I'm awful. and I wasn't a great actor on camera.
Yeah.
There was something about my energy that didn't translate. Hopefully it's going to translate onto this podcast. Okay. But you know, it was also a strange experience to be a shy kid, to be not a loner, but you know, someone who very much kept to himself. And then suddenly here I am, I'm 16 years old and I'm on the television.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm having the experience, because at least in Liverpool, Brookside was a big thing.
It was massive.
Even then, although
It was massive.
my dad used to joke with me that it was my face that killed Brookside, because I think the episode that I started in had something like 3 million viewers, and then it went down to 2.98, and then there was this steady decline. So I'm the one to blame for that, or to thank,
Them bloody
depending on you.
statistics, you know what I mean?
But so I was in this show for 2 years, and weirdly, I remember that there was a big meeting when they announced that the show was going to be cancelled. Which didn't really bother me, to be honest. I was naive. I was full of myself, full of bravado. I was like, it's fine. I'll go to
Suppose
Hollywood.
you were still a young man as well, you know what I mean? And you thought, and there
I didn't
was
have any
massive actors in there,
responsibilities.
wasn't there? You know?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was
exactly.
their life, wasn't it? I suppose at the time.
Yeah. And then a few weeks after that, I can remember being sat down by my mum, and she had this conversation with me about the fact that my dad had a rare genetic muscular disease. And she sort of laid out the prognosis of what that was going to mean over the next 10 to 12 years. And so suddenly I'm at this strange juncture where I'm 18, I'm becoming a man, and my whole life is ahead of me. But then, and I'm going out into the world to live my life. But then at the same time, there's this crisis, there's this terrible thing happening at home. I did go off to London. I moved down, went to drama school. But I was always coming back to Liverpool, every weekend, really.
Yeah.
Checking in with the family, making sure, seeing how my dad was doing. Which I have to say, he handled that illness amazing.
Yeah.
It was to witness him and the courage he showed and the dignity. It was very, very inspiring. But he was someone who I idolised.
Yeah.
He was a very tall man, very handsome man. Wore a suit every day to work. The sort of guy who could read a history book, remember everything, and have his own opinions and share them with you. I wish he'd passed that on to me.
Yeah.
But
a hero of some sort in your eyes, yeah.
And I idolised him. And for me, it was a kind of crisis of like, how can this be that this man who, as far as I can see, is fundamentally decent. He once said to me, I might tear up a few times here,
Yeah, it's all
but
good.
he once said to me, like, all I've ever wanted is to work hard, contribute to my society, marry the woman I love, have a family and be happy.
Wow.
And those were his principles.
His values, yeah.
and then to see this illness kind of take him.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very slow, steady decline, which in some ways had its blessings, because obviously it meant there's plenty of time to say goodbye.
Of course.
On the other hand, you're really just witnessing someone, one day it's one stick that he's walking with,
Yeah.
then it's two, then it's a wheelchair, then he can't even operate the wheelchair himself, then he's completely bedbound, can't even lift up a cup of tea.
Wow.
Then the mind goes and it's dementia.
Yeah.
And, that was another 3 or 4 years that he lived just in that state.
Wow. So going from 18, being in Brookside a couple of years, obviously getting into London, and then how long was that process then of your dad's?
So the diagnosis was when I was 18, and at that point I was so arrogant. Prior to this moment, I was like, life's a breeze.
Yeah.
I mean, look at me. I just manifested a job on TV with a prayer.
Yeah.
Life's going to be easy. And then it was so he died in 2017. It was around 14 years.
Yeah.
And obviously there were different stages to it. So to be honest, I went off to drama school and things weren't that, that hard. There was a sense and a knowledge of where this was going.
Yeah.
But he was incredibly optimistic. He was able to carry on working until 2012. And so I went to drama school and again, really found myself there. I went to a place called East 15, which was like a method acting school.
Yeah.
You had to earn the right to play your character. So, if your character's a boxer, you're going to learn to box.
Yeah.
If your character's homeless, you're going to sleep on the streets.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. We were doing a novel adaptation of a book by a guy called Charles Bukowski, who was like a beatnik writer, drunk. But his part of his background was that he had been beaten by his father with a belt every day.
Wow.
Now, I'd never had that experience. So Divvy here goes to his roommate and says, listen, would you mind beating me with this belt? Because I need to have this experience in order to be able to play this character. That's the sort of madness that we did at drama school. But at the same time, it gave me, like, acting became a sort of religious experience for me. It became a way of, like, really understanding life, what other people go through. And it just consumed me. It was all I ever thought about. All I wanted to do with my life. All my friends were involved in the business in some way. I graduated, I worked in the theatre and started off in Liverpool. That was my first brilliant play written by a local writer called Esther Wilson.
Nice.
All about, soldiers brutalized by the Iraq War and their mothers basically, campaigning and the tension that brought out within the family. And I guess I kind of specialized at that time in angry young men.
Yeah.
And I thought I was a terrific actor because I thought, well, this is nothing like me. I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
I've got no problems, and I love my parents, and I look back and I can see that yes, I was a vessel for the character to come through and express themselves, but really, those characters were a vessel for me to understand myself, and there was something,
some of your blind spots, some of
massive
them
blind
parts
spots.
of your shadow, and
I was full of rage, and I didn't see it, and I was definitely at a stage in my life when I was, drinking heavily and thinking that I was partying.
Yeah.
But actually I was, running away from myself and running away from the pain that I felt, about what was happening to my father.
Yeah.
And really feeling powerless to be able to do anything about it. Feeling guilty about, like, wanting to try and live my own life. Shame for not being able to help him. All that's going on, and I remember putting my hand through a window accidentally. Like, I was having a heated discussion with my mother, and I was walking away, and I had to go to the hospital and get stitches. And it was that night I was on stage playing one of these characters, and I can just remember thinking, like, oh, it's almost like I'm not actually acting when I'm playing those parts. Part of the reason why I'm so alive in those moments is because I'm accessing a part of my energy that isn't getting enough airtime in day-to-day life.
Yeah, wow.
So
what a lovely realization, you know what I mean? And I suppose, we're all acting in our lives, aren't we? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We all play different roles each day.
Yes, sub-personalities.
And I suppose, certainly with regards to the darker sides of our personality, the parts that we repress and suppress, and the parts that we're afraid of, or the parts that we're ashamed of.
Yes.
And they're not very welcomed in society, are they? Do you know what I mean? But I suppose having a platform such as acting, it was almost an opportunity to express. You know what I mean? To express these parts of ourselves, the parts of you that, were that were just laying dormant, you know what I mean? Or
Absolutely.
didn't give it
Absolutely.
wasn't, didn't have almost a safe platform, you know,
Yeah.
because that vulnerability, when we do show them vulnerabilities to the world, you know, it can be accepted by some people, but inevitably it can be rejected by others, you know what I mean? And weaponized as such.
Absolutely.
So, you know, what a lovely way to have that opportunity to almost start to find out who you are and, you know, shine a light on the different aspects of your personality and your character.
Absolutely.
But through acting over
Yeah,
a
yeah.
period of time, you know what I mean?
And also, you know, that process as well. I mean, a bit of a nutter, like I would go to my room after rehearsal and I would kind of like have conversations, you know, with the character and sort of be asking like, why do you do that? Why, you know, what's going on here? But then you start to understand like, well, I've got these sides to myself and this character's got this sides to themselves. And people are coming and they're watching these stories and they're responding to them. They've probably got these aspects to themselves as well,
Yeah.
you know, that we're not being honest about,
Yeah.
we're not readily putting forward. And it does sort of make you, you know, kind of get a little bit more comfortable with it. I certainly think, you know, one of the gifts of all that experience was just being able to share amongst strangers
Yeah.
in the rehearsal room, in conversation, you know, what you're going through, what you're feeling.
Yeah.
I had experiences of that. Nothing like what I was going to experience, you know, later on,
Yeah.
which we'll get to. But I was certainly more open and more able to be vulnerable. If I hadn't have had that as an outlet, I think those years, you know, I think it would have been a very, very tragic story.
Yeah.
And then, you know, wonderful though all that was, I think I had begun to potentially confuse, you know, the creative life with sort of destructive habits.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a good place because of my father. And also, I think the work kind of dried up in a way, in part because I was playing these very angry characters, but they were young men and I was getting older. And actually, you know, those characters, as you get older, they tend to be kind of bigger and, you know, more kind of stature than I had. So my casting kind of went out the window and there wasn't an obvious role for me to play. So I moved into teaching and I was also writing and producing, you know, making short films, music videos, that sort of thing.
And how was all that for you? Like, you know, because I suppose you're just tapping into other sides of, you know, your,
Absolutely,
your,
yeah.
you know, your colour, your
expression,
your creativity.
and creativity.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And teaching as well at drama schools and film schools and,
Nice.
you know, having that experience of inspiring, you know,
Other
18
people.
to 20-year-olds, making them see that they can achieve and witnessing them go and do that. The only thing for me was I really didn't enjoy the fact that, you know, these young people were getting into tons of debt to go out into what is a very difficult business, and I knew how hard it could be. So there was sort of things where like I'm enjoying this, but I'm not enjoying this side of life. I was half in London and half in Liverpool, and when I was in London, I was worrying about, you know, how are things in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And as I say, there was a lot of unacknowledged rage within myself that I had to get to grips with. And by the time I got to like 2016, I was a complete mess. And I went and took a test for the gene for my father's condition, because I kind of realized like I'm essentially living life as though I've got this gene and I'm going to have the same experience that my father's having. And, you know, it's making me question, can I have a relationship with a woman? Is that going to be fair?
Yeah.
To be with a woman and to know that, you know, in my early to mid 40s, I'm going to start to decline. Is it right to have a child if I'm going to be sick?
Yeah.
You know, it was absolutely bearable for me with my father because of the man my father was. I didn't feel like I was worthy of that sort of, you know, I didn't feel like I was on his level. So I thought, well, I'll do this test. And if I do have the gene, that might be a good thing because it will, you know, give me the impetus to live life and make some changes.
Yeah.
And if I don't have it, well, that's good news too.
Yeah.
So I take the test.
Nice.
And, it comes back. Doctors basically say, yeah, you've got the gene, 95% chance this is going to happen to you in your early to mid 40s. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to start living life now.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't. I just went on like a 3-month bender. You know, I wasn't living. I was telling myself, right, I'm enjoying myself now, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I can remember just being online and just, alone in my flat, drinking whiskey and just realizing I've given up.
Yeah.
I'm wasting my life, and I am actually not even bothered about that. Like, and it's not like I'm suicidal, but basically what I'm doing is I'm going to drink myself to death here.
Yeah.
And I seem to not care. And I remembered hearing about this thing called ayahuasca. And when I'd heard of it, I'd always thought, well, there's no way I'm doing that because I will go mad. And and I thought, well, you're already mad. Look at your life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at who you are and the way you're acting and how you're wasting opportunities. You may as well try this. And if that doesn't work, then you can carry on with what you're doing. So I booked in to a place in the Netherlands, and I even wrote a letter and left it in my flat to my friends and my family to sort of say, I know I've gone off on this experience, I've gone mad or I've died. I apologize, but I had to go and try. And that's how afraid I was of this experience. And, I went and...
It's almost its own script, this, isn't it? You know what I mean? It is a movie, isn't it? Really?
Well,
it's your movie,
With what happens next, so I find myself in this circle of strangers in the Netherlands, and they're from all over the world, and they're opening up and they're talking about their failures, their successes, their hopes, their dreams, their pain, their shame. And I've, even having been blessed to have been in rehearsal space, I've never experienced this, because you can always hide behind the story that you're telling, and the characters that you're playing. But this is people's real life.
This is real, yeah.
And they're opening up and they're holding space for each other, you know. It was so new to me. And the woman who was leading the retreat at one point said, there's some tarot cards laid out on the floor. Take one if you want. It can be a guide for your process. And I thought, I'm not taking a tarot card.
Yeah.
What a load of fucking nonsense. Can I swear, by the way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fucking
What a
knock
load of
yourself
fucking nonsense. I'm not taking a tarot card. And I suddenly heard like this voice in my head and felt pulled to a card. It was like, take that card. That's your card. Take it.
Mm.
So I went over, picked it up, went and sat back down, turned the card over, and it was from the Osho tarot deck, and the card was the creator.
Mm.
And I just started weeping.
Wow.
And, I could feel like something's shifting within me, but something's shifting within the universe. Like something's opening up to me and I'm going towards it that I can't comprehend.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing I had to go to was like, organized religion. So I was like, I'm about to meet God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Went out, we had a break. I went out and had a smoke in the woods. Again, weeping, came back in, did my first breathwork session. And, I'm there, completely seize up, can't move. And have the sort of awareness that, like, I'm experiencing what it's like to be in the situation my father's in right now where I can't move. And suddenly this guide, one of the people working on this retreat just appears, starts stroking my cheek and is singing along to the music. And the lyrics were, remember who you are. This life is but a dream made of love. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
What have I stepped into? I feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland and I've just gone down this rabbit hole, but I'm in this heavenly space.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this was possible. I didn't know there were people out there doing this. I mean, maybe I don't think we've spoken about when you first got involved in meditation and all this, but I hadn't encountered anything like this.
Yeah.
It was all just so new, and I hadn't even drank the ayahuasca by this point, I won't say too much about like what goes, because you can't really sum up those experiences with
absolutely
psychedelics.
not. It's such a personal experience, isn't it? And the mysticism and the direct experience. You just can't deny it.
No.
You know, you cannot deny, you know, that experience. You know, I mean, any psychedelic experience, but especially if it's in a safe setting.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, and by the sounds of it, it was almost a journey in itself. You know, you've gone to Holland, you're in this place, you know, there's people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And that enough is an adventure, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
and then, you know, you're there and you know, I suppose you'd only ever knew acting as such, do you know what I mean? You know, that was your whole life, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, from the age, even, you know, throughout your life, being a young boy, you know, going into drama school, you know, living almost a normal life, you know, in Liverpool as such, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The journey you go on, and then you're almost like, as you said, because I can remember my own moments, you know, with medicine like ayahuasca. And I think for me, I realised I always knew there was something more. I was always fascinated by something else. Do you know what I mean? And it was that yearning or that longing to know something else that was beyond your own narrative or beyond your own moments. You know, and I think for me, I had sort of snippets of it, and it was always like on the dance floor. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah,
you know, on the dance floor, under the influence of ecstasy, you know, and having them godly moments, you know, and sometimes maybe even speaking to someone in a club that you've never met before, but you just had some sort of deep and meaningful conversation. I know I did anyway.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, wow, what was all that about? You know what I mean? And I think for many years, you know, going to like the likes of Glastonbury and going to Ibiza, you know, and watching them sunrises after a night out, you know, after such a heart-opening celebration, or same in Glastonbury, I just knew there was more magic out there. And luckily enough for me, David, I opened up a yoga studio, so I was in a holistic world, where I was meeting, you know, obviously, you know, your average Joe. But we were getting emails and we were being contacted by all different people from all walks of life. You know, your tarot readers, you know, your meditators, you know, your shamans, you know, your musicians. So it was almost like, wow, I've stepped into a world that I know is available.
Right.
And the beautiful thing for me is that I actually didn't have to go anywhere.
No.
Everyone and everything came to me, and you know, because I had the space, do you know what I mean? But you know, coming back to it, this experience where you're almost like, it's almost like you're seeing past your own limitations. Your eyes are wide open. You're like, oh my goodness me, there's more.
There is more.
There's more.
That was the biggest thing I took away. I remember coming home and being like, I mean, I think this is a common thing. The first time a lot of people do psychedelics, you do have that moment where it's like, I'm the Messiah now. I have the truth. So I was emailing everyone like, magic is real. You know, all the stories that you heard as a child, it's all true. Go out and look for it. And like a nutter, I did all the things you're not supposed to do. I quit all my work. I put my flat on the market. I broke up all my, you know, any relationships I was involved in. And I was like, I'm going traveling. I'm going to go and see the world because, as you say, there's more. I was like, I've been so stuck in this idea of I'm an actor and trying to tell stories when really I didn't have a bloody story to tell. I didn't know anything at that point. But I was desperately trying to, you know, do this thing. And I was like, no, this is what I need to go off and explore, whatever this is.
And did it rip you open, that experience in Holland?
Absolutely.
Because it can totally... I mean, it can show you, you know, it can blast your worldview and your, you know, mental constructs out the water, can't it? And almost it can be, it's so real, the experience, that you can't deny it. But it can be a scary one as well.
Yeah,
you know, can't
absolutely.
It? But how was it for you then?
I think, you know, I had the experience of like just not being me. And not being anything. And, you know, shapes and colours and moving down this corridor of energy but not as myself, just being in it, and that seeming like eternity.
Yeah.
And then coming back to myself, I was visited by my dad's spirit. He wasn't dead at this point, but like he appeared before me, and he didn't say anything, but it just felt like, you know, he was transmitting just healing to me. And it, to me, it's like there's my life before that, and then there's my life afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different framework and sense of potential and what the world is and what it can be and who I am within it.
Yeah. And do you feel like it was destined? I mean, I know obviously we're going to get into astrology in a bit, you know what I mean?
Well, maybe I'll say this, that once I got into astrology and understood that what was taking place for me astrologically at that point was Pluto opposing my sun. Pluto is the slowest moving planet. Many people never have Pluto opposing the sun because it takes 240 years to get to any particular space. It was directly opposing my sun from the 4th house of family of origins.
Wow.
Pluto represents death, destruction, chaos, rebirth.
Yeah.
The sun is your process of individuation in this lifetime.
Yeah.
The first day that I drank ayahuasca was when it first exactly
Wow.
opposed. So, but I mean, just to explain a little bit about like how astrology works, it's like I was definitely supposed to encounter the energy of the underworld at this point.
Yeah.
And of transformation.
Yeah.
You know, it was a case, and that is very much what, you know, those experiences are. You do, because as you say, it can be scary because in some...
There's a calling, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's a... It's like, you know, I mean, I like the movies, you know, it runs through all the movies, doesn't it? You know, that sense of the hero's journey, initiating, you know, whether it's Top Gun, you know, he's the Top Gun, but he's not the Iceman, you know what I mean? And he's got to go through that journey. And I mean, I love, you know, I know we spoke about this, the likes of the Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? You know, you've got Frodo, who's sort of in that, like, safe lover's energy, you know, and he's in his community and it's all playful, and then, you know, he's got that calling, you know, Gandalf comes and he tells him there's more. You know, there's more here. There's you know, you're chosen to go beyond this life, and you know, and then there's that call, and then but he goes into the underworld, and especially with the first movie, I think he goes to meet the spider and stuff like that. And, you know, and so there's that calling to go into the depths, isn't there? You know what I mean? Almost like to die. You know, this old version of David. You know what I mean? Is to fall away, and then you to step into or to become, and to be born into a new way of being as such.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely, and that, you know, that's also a difficult process because it's almost you get back. You know, you finally come home. And it's like, how the hell do I integrate this? And what is the direction I'm supposed to go in? And I had an interest in like 12 months afterwards where, as I say, I put my flat on the market, and then I had an offer on the flat that I had a buyer, and I went actually for my first astrology reading, which I wasn't that impressed with, but she said to me, you know, you're going to have a very difficult May, a very difficult December, but you just got to go through this experience to become the person you're supposed to be. And I thought, right, okay. And then the next day they found Japanese knotweed in the garden of my flat. So that basically meant that the sale got held up. And I'd bought a tarot deck, and I was doing that, you know, taking a card every day, and I turned the card over and it was the Emperor card. And I just had this sense of like, I need to go home and see my dad. It'd been a while. You know, a couple of months since Christmas or whatever, and I thought I'm going to go home and see him because I'm going to go off traveling, and I kind of need to make peace with him. And I went home, and you know, literally the next day he stopped eating. Started with the sort of end of life breath, which is and 6 weeks later he finally passed away.
And so this was just after the ayahuasca journey.
Literally, like, I mean, this is, again, to me, it's like, if this had happened before I'd done the ayahuasca, I don't think I'd have been able to cope. You know, that experience meant that I was able to survive it, really, you know, and to also, for it not to kind of destroy me, because as I say, I worshipped my dad, and it had been such a painful experience, but I sort of knew I mean, I don't have a clear-cut idea of, you know, my spirituality, but in a sense, it's like, it's goodbye for now. It's not goodbye forever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 'Cause death
So-
can be such a morbid thing, can't it? And
Absolutely.
you know, and people have got so much fear around it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for you to have that experience, which is, you know, you were talking about before, you just felt like infinite and vast, and it wasn't you. And then when you have that experience, it can warm the heart, because you're thinking, okay, you know, this process that my dad's going through, and to watch him come towards the later stages of his life, you having that experience almost, you know, I make an assumption, but offered you some comfort and potentially some sacredness that, you know, he was passing only from his physical body, but
Exactly.
his essence or his soul, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I think it's like, you know, that experience with the ayahuasca, just whatever I think I am, I'm also something else. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, I'm in the form of David,
Of course.
you know.
Yeah.
But that's just what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
You know, and so similarly, if that's the case for me, it's the case for everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's the case for my dad.
Right.
You know, and so and also just realizing, like, you know, all he ever wanted to do was marry the woman he loved, contribute to his society, have a family and be happy. He did it all.
And he did it.
He did it.
Yeah.
So I was able to make peace with it. I was also able to be there. You know, finding the Japanese knotweed was a blessing.
Yeah.
It meant that I was home. It meant that I got to have that closure.
Yeah.
If I'd gone off traveling and missed that, again, I don't know whether I'd have had the same peace that I was able to find. But so then I did, you know, finally got to go off traveling, because I thought I had to venture far and wide in order to find what I was looking for,
Yeah,
right?
which is yourself
I didn't
inevitably,
realize that you were here in Liverpool. You know, I didn't know there was Planet Yoga, you know. So I went off, I went to India, I went to Peru, yoga, breath work, more psychedelics.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'd had a very difficult December as well. And
is this still in 2016 then?
so we're in 2017 now.
Yeah.
And 2018, I was in Peru. And I started to think about that astrology reading, and to think, like, why did she say I was going to have a difficult May? Because I had a very difficult May.
Yeah.
You know, my dad died on June 14th, and May was really, you know, being with him by his bed.
Yeah.
Wondering, is this going to be it? Is he going to pass? You know, feeling guilty, because on the one hand, I sort of wanted him to rest in peace, but I didn't want to let him go. And then, as I say, I just sort of wondered, like, well, why did she say that? How did she know that? What did she mean? And I started to really throw myself into astrology and read everything I could, really study my chart, try and understand myself. And, you know, we've been having this conversation, and obviously there have been themes around family, the father, quite a sort of sensitive kid, imaginative, yearning for something, flair for the dramatic.
Yeah.
And then as I start to understand the language of astrology, and I'm looking at my chart, I'm like,
It's
holy
all
shit,
there.
it's all there. Like,
It's all there.
It's all there. And through looking at this, I can understand myself, and I can accept myself.
Yeah.
I can accept some of these.
And was you a suspicious man before all this, you know, skeptic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, I think
When it comes to all matters related to
when I was a kid, I believed in, you know, magic, the mythical.
Santa Claus, the whole lot.
As I got older, I was like, they're just stories,
Yeah.
you know. And I think now I'm probably at the point of, like, yeah, they're stories, but there's wisdom and truth in them.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's what astrology is. It's wisdom. It's ancient wisdom and knowledge and understanding of the human experience.
Yeah.
And I was very skeptical. And, you know, when people first told me about my astrology, it was obviously your sun sign, which is just one aspect
That's
of
right.
the self.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not that. I'm not a Cancerian. I'm not a crab. I don't like to hide away from the world at home. I'm not sensitive. And
Yeah.
bloody well am I. You know what I mean? I'm all those things. And I'm, you know, as you said before, there are different aspects to the self. but as I say, and it wasn't all rosy, right? I could see in my chart challenges that I had and things that I didn't like about myself and tendencies that I knew, okay, there's something being shown to me here. Like I do need to work on this. Mars in Cancer. Mars is your warrior energy, right? It's your aggression, it's your vitality. In the sign of Cancer, it's like, well, the warrior is having to stay at his mum's house, and the warrior has to understand everyone else's emotions. Yeah. Well, the warrior doesn't want to do that. And so often people with Mars in Cancer, like me, don't address their own anger, don't express it. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they don't have it. Yeah. It goes underground, and it comes out in different ways. Passive aggressive. Yeah, of course. Drinking alcohol to numb the pain because they don't want to admit the fact that, I'm angry. Of course. So it just became a great tool for understanding myself. Yeah. And then it got really exciting because I started to understand, oh, hang on, I can actually apply this to worldly events. Yeah. You can draw a chart at any point and see how the planets are relating to each other. Of course. What's the sort of energetic alignment of the moment? Yeah, what's going on? Yeah. And I'd like to get into that, just sort of like to circle back a little bit because obviously, you're traveling, you're exploring. You're opening your heart, obviously, you know what I mean? You go on these experiences, you talk about breathwork and psychedelics, and these seem to be almost a reoccurring theme, do you know what I mean? That runs through like people who are exploring things, you know. Yeah. And I know you've done some holotropic breathwork and you've done more medicine, and when we say medicine, we talk about psychedelics, and just time away. I know you being in the jungle, doing a dieta, all that kind of stuff. And obviously then, coming back to astrology. So you talk about your chart. So can you give us almost a simple overview of what that means? For anyone listening today, people go, well, what does the chart mean? And I think from my understanding is everyone, it's the time you're born. Yes. Yeah, it's the time. Is it the time you take your first breath? Exactly. When you take your first breath and you're coming into the world, there's an alignment. Yes. At the level of the planets. Yeah. And then that is almost a signature. Yeah. Almost a blueprint for energetic imprint. And then so when you talk about the chart, you obviously had your time of birth. Yeah. And then, that then gives you, it's almost the key, isn't it? Yeah. I know we don't necessarily always need the time of birth, but that's the key to unlock the very map of what the chart's really showing you and how you can work with that throughout your life. Exactly, yeah. You basically, as you say, you breathe in this energy. And, whichever way you want to look at it, you're sort of like the shepherd of this energy, and this energy is coming through you and trying to manifest. But you're the one in control, right? Like you get to choose how you utilize that energy and express that energy. But there are innate talents in the chart, like harmonious flow between the planets. But then there are challenges. As we know, though, in life, if you've got a challenge, you tend to work harder at that. Yeah. So challenges can often become actually where you are the most gifted, where you are an expert. Yeah. And then the planets are always moving as well. So they're always interacting with this kind of core energetic imprint that you carry with you. I wonder why it is the first breath. I mean, obviously, because I know in some maps of astrology, they talk about when potentially the soul comes into the fetus. Yeah, and so it almost backdates to, it's not necessarily the first breath, is it? I think it's probably on the basis that this is when you really come into the world. Yeah, is when you leave the mother's womb and you separate. That's when the real process of individuation begins. Yeah. So, let's talk, obviously, talking about the chart, because there's obviously the planets, isn't there? Yeah. So there's these planets, and then there's the map of the zodiac, isn't there? Right. Right. Yeah. So we've got the 12 signs of the zodiac. Exactly. And then we've got all the planets. Yeah. And the chart. Then, if you're looking at a chart, because then there's the 12 houses as well, as that's correct, isn't it? Exactly. So
this then almost becomes like, okay, a binding stamp here for me to understand, you know, who I am, or why I'm here,
right?
You know, what is potentially my purpose here,
right? Absolutely.
Almost an overview of why I am here, and
because so the planets represent like fundamental drives and energies that we all have. Venus, you know, the drive to love and create and express, and Mercury, think, communication, the Sun, process of individuation, the Moon, emotional life, you know, yearnings, needs, and then
so there's a symbology to all of the planets, obviously.
Absolutely,
then.
And I mean, this is all, you know, related with myth and archetypal energies, and
where does this even come from, David? Do you know what I mean? Like,
now that's a huge.
I know this is a big question.
That's a huge question.
You know,
but
can we tickle that for a minute? You know,
well. So basically, you know, like what I do now when I'm drawing on, and we'll do it actually at the end of this, which people listening can join in with as well. But, you know, I'm standing on the shoulders of thousands of years of people gazing up at the sky, noticing that there seems to be a correlation.
Because we're talking about the Druids here, aren't we? And the pagans and the Aztecs and the Egyptians,
absolutely, you know, way back. And it's all come to where we are now. You know, there was a time when astrology was used for like yes or no answers, because it was like, is it a good time to go to war? Yes or no? And now we're very much at a point where, as you say, like it can be simply a tool for just self-exploration, almost like a journal.
Yeah.
But then there's all these sorts of implications about, you know, evolutionary astrology when you start bringing in the nodes of the moon, the south node potentially describing past life experiences and what you're coming into this life already knowing, and therefore what you need to go towards.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, and then you've got the 12 signs, which, I mean, should we
let's lean into it, because of, you know, I think obviously most people would only know their sun sign one day. You know, I was born in May 15th. My sun sign is Taurus. Do you know what I mean? But obviously there was an alignment with all the other planets.
Exactly.
At that time of that first breath.
And that's such an important point to make, you know, for anyone who is listening, because much like I was saying before, you may have heard of what your sun sign is and you don't relate to it.
Yeah.
Because in order for you to just be that, you'd have to have every single planet in that sign.
Yeah.
Which is impossible.
Yeah, and not always someone could be born in even on the same day, but at a different time.
Absolutely.
And so
then it's
the sun in Taurus would necessarily be in a different house, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
And so it would mean something totally different.
It would find expression in a different area of life.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so sun in the 4th house is very different to sun in the 10th house.
Yeah. And there's that changes every you know.
So whenever you're born, you'll have a different sign rising on the eastern horizon, and therefore that affects, you know, the 12 houses.
Yeah.
So if we do dive into, you know, the zodiacal wheel, essentially what we're dealing with here is a framework for understanding basically the evolution of consciousness through the human experience. Right. We start with Aries. Aries is I am.
Yeah.
It's the emerging of self-awareness. It's you know, pioneering spirit, the initiating energy of the Big Bang. Aries, if you like, goes out and discovers the land. And then every sign that follows is a dynamic response to the sign that's come before. So Aries, the initiating excitement and adventure. Okay, I am. Well, now I'm noticing that I have a body.
Yeah.
You know, I can touch things, I can taste things, I can smell things. I'm on this land that Aries has just discovered. Let's build a house, let's get safe, let's get secure, let's get comfortable. What do we need to feel grounded? Okay, I have. The next stage of evolution within that is I think.
Yeah.
You know, I want to know stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious about things. I want to go off. I want to explore. There seems to be some neighbours on that land over there. Let's go over to them.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat.
Go say hello.
Let's learn what they think.
Yeah.
You know? And then from there, we move into Cancer. Well, Cancer, you know, I am, I have, I think, I feel.
Yeah.
You know, I notice that there are these people, my parents, I care about them. I worry if they're okay, because if they're not okay, I'm not okay. Actually, I kind of want to start a family of my own as well.
Yeah.
And in Cancer, you kind of get this solid emotional foundation that leads beautifully into Leo. And, you know, if you look at anyone who's come from a solid family and has been loved and supported, they tend to be kind of confident. They tend to like, yeah, I like who I am. I want to show myself off. I want to play. I want to be seen. And, you know, Leo is very creative. It's... If the previous signs, you know, we've gone on that journey, then Leo is like, okay, I want to have a party.
Yeah.
You know?
Leadership and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the next sign, dynamic response to the previous sign, Virgo. So let's take this example, right? David comes on a podcast, right? He dares to be seen. He dares to show himself. Well, what's going to happen tonight when I go home? David's going to worry. Did he say something stupid? Did he come across as a bit of an idiot? What are people going to think? He's going to start to worry. He's going to start to analyze every little thing he said. He's going to zero in on details and he's going to start to discriminate. And that's very much what Virgo is about. It's a kind of a crisis point in the development. But, you know, Virgo, it's a wonderful sign. It's very much about like wanting to create order, using the mind. Virgo, if you go back to the idea of like Taurus and the harvesting of the land, Virgo will be going through and saying like, okay, this crop seems to be good for this purpose. When we use this herb, it seems to alleviate this illness. So Virgo, I analyze. Then you come to Libra, and Libra is polar opposite to the very first sign of Aries, right? What was Aries all about? It was I am.
Yeah.
It was I. Well, now in Libra, we're going to try, because we've just had this crisis experience of Virgo. So now in Libra, I'm going to balance my needs with the needs of the other.
Yeah.
You know, Libra is all about harmony, diplomacy. That can find expression, obviously, in creativity as well, and artistry.
Nice.
But if you think Libra, I balance, one of the ways that we balance in life is through marriage.
Yeah.
Right? When you get married, one of the things that hopefully happens is you have sex.
Yeah.
And if it's good sex, you transform through that experience, don't you? You know,
Absolutely,
when you have that really powerful experience with another human being where you merge with them, it's transformation.
Yes,
the
tantra.
ego transforms. Yeah, exactly, Tantra. And now we're in the realm of Scorpio, which is intense. Scorpio has a real awareness that death is coming. Death is real. So it doesn't have time, you know, it wants to bring everything up into the light, everything dirty and shameful, so that we can just become more whole.
Yeah.
It's transformation. I transform through crisis. Scorpio. Now after Scorpio comes Sagittarius. You're a Sagittarius rising. Right?
Yeah.
What happens when you've been in a crisis, when you've encountered the shadow, when you've descended into the underworld? You question, you seek answers. You create meaning around it, you know. You either come up with your own philosophy as to explain everything that you've gone through, or you go seeking on a journey. Yeah. Maybe you turn to religion, you go to other cultures, you find out what do other people think.
The mystic, it's the gypsy, you know?
Exactly. It's all about inspiration, faith, optimism.
Yeah.
You know, your chart is ruled by Jupiter. You know, you're a very optimistic person. You're all about inspiring other people and meaning and the quest. Big journey in life, the big questions. That's the realm of Sagittarius. Yeah. Okay, so where have we got to? So we're in Sagittarius. I seek answers, and you know, in a way, you could say Sagittarius. I go to university. You come out of university. Well, now you want to find your place in the world, in society. Yeah. To some extent, you conform a little bit in order to take that place and take your role. Capricorn is very much the sign of the fabric of society. It's the sign of achievement in the world. If you think Capricorn comes from the Latin word for mountain goat, so if you picture like the goat climbing up the mountain, and then after Capricorn, we come to Aquarius, which Aquarius is kind of like yeah, I'm in this collective, I'm in this group, but I'm unique, I'm a bit different. I'm interested in the future, I'm a little bit zany. This isn't quite the right way to describe it, but like there's the saying, I love humanity, it's people I can't stand. Like Aquarius is sort of like, you know what I mean? It's very much, they like being a part of a group, as opposed to just being one-on-one. And it's about shared ideals and values, and as I say, very, very futuristic. The collective, making sure that basically everyone is respected for their uniqueness.
Yeah.
And then finally you come to Pisces, the old soul of the zodiac, the end of the journey round this wheel. Pisces has done it all before.
Yeah.
Pisces is not interested in doing the dishes or achieving in the world. Pisces is preparing to return to source.
Yeah.
You know, so it's ego-less.
Yeah.
It's very much a sign of compassion and devotion and surrender, which is tricky energy for, you know, existing in this world.
Yeah.
Pisces people can, you know, I've got my moon in Pisces. It can be people who are prone to victimhood, playing the savior, martyring themselves. And then we come back to Aries, which is obviously now you begin to understand Aries is so much focused on I and action.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's in response to Pisces, which has all been about surrender and the dissolution of the ego.
Yeah.
So these are the 12 stages, and how have we got to this point where we have this framework? That's a huge question, but it's epic, and you can just see, and everyone has these energies at their disposal.
All these characteristic traits, you know, and it weaves through us all, doesn't it, David?
Absolutely.
You know, even, you know, talking about, you know, you said there, you know, your moon or your sun, you know, I think, I suppose the at the very early stages of, I know, reading my chart, you know, you're looking at your sun, which obviously mine's in Taurus.
Yes.
You know, and then you've got your moon. You know what I mean? Where's your moon and where's your ascendant? They're the sort of
that's
main three.
They're the main three. Yeah. They're the main three.
And so if we can give the listener almost a brief overview of maybe my chart and where them three lie and how that plays out as you know me and my personality.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great idea. Okay, so as we said before, your rising sign is in Sagittarius. Now, your rising sign is, on the one hand, it's how the world sees you, the first impression that you make on people, the role that you're sort of called to play in life by others. It's also, though, your agenda, right? Like it is in a sense like your, you know, the mission, what gets you out of bed and out the door in the day, it's to start the day, to face the world, is your rising sign.
Yeah. And mine's Sagittarius.
Yours is Sagittarius.
But that'll be in a certain house as well.
So the rising sign is always the first house.
Right.
So Sagittarius, and this is ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, faith, optimism, higher knowledge, higher learning.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that, you know, just in conversation with you, you talk about being a container for the self. I mean, that is such a Sagittarius rising, Jupiter impulse, you know. And
so I'm almost then embodying what was meant to be.
Right. Well, can I tell the story about when I first read your chart and how I first met you?
Absolutely.
So I was back in Liverpool in 2019 and waiting to go off travelling again. And it was the start of the year, and I thought, I'm going to go and do a yoga class somewhere in Liverpool. And I found Planet Yoga, and I went and did a yoga class. And I went home, and my friend was around, and I was like, I've just met a guru.
I'm gone.
No. This is what I literally said, because I was like, there's this guy in Liverpool, but he's actually teaching yoga. You know, the experience I've just had is what I went to India looking for.
Yeah.
There's someone teaching yoga, and it's not you just blindly going through the postures for the sake of going through the postures. There was wisdom being transmitted through that class, and I could see the sort of the community that there was there. Yeah, and I was like, holy shit! Everything I've been looking for is just down the road on Smithdown. You know what I mean? And then a few months later, I ended up reading your chart, and I looked, and I was like, "This is actually insane." You know, you've got Sagittarius rising, you've got the Sun in the 5th house,
which is
in
Taurus. Yeah.
Well, so it's in the 5th house, but it's in the sign of Taurus because
right.
of where the rising sign is. It then influences what signs are on the cusp of which house.
Yeah.
But the 5th house is very much the house of like your creativity, your pleasure, your your children as well, the child within yourself.
Yeah.
Individual expression and celebrating that. You know, the Sun in the 5th is happiest in the 5th. So you as a person are very much about celebrating the self, but also what I see constantly you doing. I mean, you're doing it now with me, right? Like I've hidden myself away and been, really not wanted to come out as an astrologer to anyone in the wider world, right? And here I am having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And that's because one of the things that you encourage in people is celebrate yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that
Be
you do
yourself,
that is by also celebrating yourself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because if you're just telling me I should be me and out there in the world enjoying myself and you're not doing it,
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, well, you're not doing it, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So and then, I mean, this isn't exactly what you asked me, but you've got Pluto on the midheaven, which is very much, Pluto, it makes you a very powerful, transformative character within the community, within the impact that you can have on society. And so it doesn't surprise me that, yeah, of course, you're teaching, you're trying to bring other people's stories to other people through different mediums. And that's a really wonderful thing when you read someone's chart and you see that they are living and they're really exploring all these different facets of the energy that they have at their disposal to the fullest. That's what you want to see.
Absolutely.
You want to see people
because you're seeing that
flourishing.
potential, aren't you? I'm sure you're seeing the chart and you're seeing the potential of the soul.
That's exactly what it is. The natal chart is the potential.
Yeah.
You're the one living it, and you're the one who's got to maximize it and express it however you choose to express it. But the natal chart basically describes the energy that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, I think certainly open up a yoga studio and going on the journey of travel and always being, I suppose, quite radical, and a bit out there and pretty individual, and I see my character as being grounded and centered, and there's leadership qualities, and I've always been good at bringing people together and good communicator. And then that whole journey of like yoga and meditation and seeking and searching and transforming and it was sticky and it was murky and some of it was beautiful, and it was a massive journey over a period of time. And I think when the first time I read my chart was probably around 2015. So I remember going to Thailand in 2012. And then we're having this massive journey of travel and transformation, and opened up Planet Yoga in 2013, and then it was thick and fast for like a number of years, and I think it was towards the end of 2015. I'd never had my chart read before, but I actually went on a workshop in Wales, Cae Bon, and I didn't know how big this guy was at the time, but we sat with a guy called Kaipacha. His name's what's his name? But he does all these Pele reports, and he's got a massive, YouTube channel. And he actually came back to Liverpool. He stayed a couple of nights. He got to use the studio. We got to do some yoga together. And in return, I was able to, he read me chart.
Oh, wow.
Tom, his name's Tom Letcher.
Right.
And then it gave me so much clarity.
Yeah.
Because he basically was reading me.
Yeah.
And my potential and what had been happening to me, and then potentially what I could move into. So I was very much in the thick of it anyway. But that was the first time I almost felt a little bit more confident and safe in what had been happening to me, because from the outside looking in, especially to some people around me, it was quite a radical shift in my journey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, and you know, it was almost, not that I was ever ostracised, but I was potentially judged by a lot of people that he's gone off his head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that map of astrology, you know, and you know, over the years, having friends, you know, I've got a beautiful friend, a guy called Oriel West, who's, you know, read my chart.
Yeah.
And then I think the journey you and I have been on, you know, not just with the chart, but really friendship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then for you too, I mean, in all honesty, you know, and I'm not just saying this, is that I feel as if the way you read my chart is actually, there's so much depth in there, and it's given me a lot of clarity, but you keep it very simple as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I've been able to deeply relate to almost this chart, which can almost look very confusing, I suppose. You know, you can look at your chart and think, oh, okay, but there's all these signs, there's all these houses, there's all these planets, and you're thinking, oh, and obviously they're connected to the elements as well, aren't they?
Well, this is it. There's so much in it, and it is endless. But when you're having a reading, I think it's always important to keep it practical with what's actually alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there are all sorts of, and the other thing is as well, like, you know, I have my biases that I come to when I look at a chart, because I'm just human.
Of course.
But so one of the things I have to try and do is really try and keep focused on you.
Yeah.
And I also am very much someone who really appreciates a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I might be wanting to focus on this aspect over here.
Yeah.
But actually that's not really alive for you right now, or it's not something that you need to go into right now. But it is, it's very, very complex, can be. But when you really distill it down to what's going on right now, it can be so valuable. And I think that,
because I suppose people do really want to know not just who they really are, but they want to know, you know, what makes them tick and why. You know, what's the motivation and the intentions behind, or their purpose, and where are they going, and what you know, are they reaching their potential? So as a reader, you're looking at, it's almost an overview, isn't it, of somebody's life, but then you're able to pinpoint and pick out where are they up to, and maybe what to lean into. You know, you can almost steer people, can't you? If
people have gotten into a rut or are frustrated or not feeling fulfilled, look at your chart.
Yeah.
Because it's going to show you something, and it might even be something that you've always, you know, you've not acknowledged about yourself, because maybe you listened to someone when you were 12, like a teacher, or somebody talked you down over something, and you've let a talent go to waste, or you've played small and you've hidden away from some aspect. But, you know, if you look at your chart and listen, you know, you can be as skeptical as you want and say that this is all projection, like we're all just projecting these things onto the chart and the symbols. Fine. Use it that way then. Yeah. Because you're still doing divination. You're still getting down to the heart. What is it that your heart desires? When you go through that process of self-exploration, that's what you're doing. That's right. You're figuring out, what is it that I want? And the beauty of astrology is that really what you want is why you were created, why you chose that moment to be born. So the universe is going to support you because it's all there in the chart. Yeah. You know, you've got these energies in you to draw on, like you're doing. Yeah. You know, like, frankly, you know, there's things in my chart which means if I just hid away from the world forever, which, you know, is something that I tried to do for a good few years, I know I would be wasting aspects of, you know, my chart, my energy, things that I need. And then they come out in darker ways. So the you know, the actor in me, the guy who needs to be seen and talking and communicating, well, then I'll just do that with my partner and I'll bore the tits off her, you know, because it'll all be about me. Because it's
uninspiring, isn't it? It's unfulfilling, you know, and I think certainly if you can really take a pragmatic look at your chart and come at it with an open mind, and maybe ask the right questions,
Yeah.
it can certainly be, it's a map, isn't it?
It is.
It's a map, it's a tool for you to certainly unpick parts of yourself, and looking at your potential, looking at potential avenues of where to place your life and how to place it there. You know, and I mean, how much is this, because you know, we all want to feel almost worthy, don't we? Or we've fulfilled something.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? You know, we're not just coming here, you know, but it's not just by chance, is it? You know what I mean? You know, I mean, it is, you know, when you feel into them experience with psychedelics, you start to potentially understand the intelligence of the mystery, the great mystery of consciousness. You know,
beautiful way to put it.
We'll bring it to consciousness, and we actually, you know, this higher power, the great mystery, you know, the holy creator, whatever you want to call it, because it's got many names.
Exactly.
You know, is the mind almost can't work it out. I mean, we have beautiful conversations around it, but we have to surrender to this, to this, almost this greater knowing within us. Like, we know something to be true, but we don't know what it is, or we don't know what consciousness is, but we do know that it is, you know, and so and I think certainly, you know, coming back to the astrology, you know, I talk about these maps, and there's many maps, whether, you know, it's the map of you know, there's the archetypes, isn't there? And you know, there's the map of there's the elements, and then there's the chakras, and, you know, there's many maps that we can relate to in our lives, and this is just another map, isn't it?
That's all it is,
Where does, like, karma come into this then, David? Do you know what I mean? Because karma is something that everyone's heard about, do you know what I mean? And so if we were to maybe just tap in for a moment, you know, where does karma come into this, and potentially destiny, you know, and free will as well, you know, because we've got a choice, haven't we?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm obviously going to try and answer this question, but I don't know, right? Like, this is what I view and what I think. I mean, there's different approaches to astrology, whereby, you know, you've got evolutionary astrology, which really takes seriously the idea that, you know, you are a soul reincarnating. Yeah. And therefore, you know, to some extent you are born in, you know, the situation that you find yourself in is in response to things that you've encountered in the past. Yeah. Now, that doesn't have to be like from the point of view of, oh, I did something terrible in my last life, therefore I have to suffer in this one. Yeah. But again, you know, I spoke about the nodes before of the moon. This is where, like, okay, I've come into this life with skills and talents and experiences and familiarities, but I incarnated because there's something else I want to explore. Yeah. There's something I need to go towards. You know, if I've got
some lessons to learn, there's things to resolve.
Experiences to have. Yeah. Your south node, therefore, is like your comfort zone. And it's often what you do for the first 30 years, 35 years of your life, because you know it well. And then by the time you start getting to 35, 36, you start going, there's something I'm yearning to explore that I'm not. Yeah. You know, like if you had the south node in the second house and the north node in the eighth house, you really need to get out of your comfort zone. You really need to go towards deep experiences of transformation. Yeah. Don't play it safe. Yeah. Because you know, otherwise you're going to just
because people do play it safe, don't they? Or they're so conditioned by a collective story that they don't really ever get under the skin with, you know, and people play it safe, or they'll stay in the comfort zone, and you know, I think there's nothing wrong with comfort, but sometimes there's a picture of success which I feel is painted to everybody, and so everyone's almost trying to live almost a collective narrative, whatever that is, you know what I mean, and you know, without really getting into the deeper layers of self, or the deeper layers of maybe why they're here and what they're here to achieve. I mean, I believe obviously we're here to procreate. Do you know what I mean? We're here to commune with others. You know what I mean, absolutely. And to feel into that sense of family. You know, and we're here because we feel like there's something purposeful to do. So we go to work. You know, we do stuff. You know what I mean? We have a vocation. So there's almost these, you know, these collective stories that almost, they play out for all of us, don't you know? We go out and we do, and we come together and we eat food and we sleep and we're in tune with the cycles of life, I suppose. But we have this deeper yearning, don't we, to almost know the unknown or the mysteries of life. And
and I think, you know, the experiences that you have, the people you interact with. One of the things that astrology has given me anyway is the sort of sense that, like, everything that's happening, the people I'm meeting, the experiences that I have, it's actually all serving me becoming more me.
Yeah.
Me evolving more and
whole.
more into the person I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Into why I came here.
Yeah.
You know, into more and more embodying, like, the qualities that I see in the chart.
Yeah.
You know, and I can try and hide away from it, but then someone's going to come and knock on my door.
Yeah.
You know, there's a way of looking at it as well. I did have an experience which was quite violent with somebody where someone, you know, it was quite a scary experience, but I can look at that and sort of be like, there's something in that that's a mirror to me, to what's inside of me that I'm not owning, you know, and there's an invitation for me to get in contact with that rage within myself.
Well, and that takes great self-awareness though, doesn't it? Because people won't necessarily have that sense of awareness to maybe understand certain experiences and or to take ownership or to take responsibility for these hidden parts of ourselves or for these experiences, and we'll naturally go into a victim mentality and blame and shame and point fingers rather than actually go, hang on a minute. What's the universe trying to tell me here? Or is there a lesson in this? You know, we've heard that saying there's a blessing in disguise. Do you know what I mean? You know, what's the lesson for me? Is there something for me to own? Is this experience shining light on a blind spot?
Yeah.
Is it shining light on something which I'm not seeing?
Yeah.
You know, is it asking me to notice something that I'm not noticing? All that kind of stuff, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
And when we can truly embody that and practice that, then we become more of ourselves, don't we? We access, from my perspective, more of our naturalness.
Well, again, you know, the sort of crises that, you know, I guess you would say are represented by things like, you know, in astrology, Pluto and Scorpio, these transformative processes. It's like the blasted tower in the tarot. You know, what this is about is it's an opportunity actually to move away from false attachments, you know, to this idea of you that has become static. I mean, you know, the version of me that was, I am an actor, you know, that was my identity. That was all I was. Yeah. If someone asked me, who's David? I'm an actor. Yeah. And that was it.
It was the label.
Yeah.
That was it.
And it's like, and then, you know, I go and do ayahuasca and it's like, no, I'm so much more than that.
Yeah, you're not.
And so there's a way in which you then, you can start to look at the crises and see that it is a blessing.
Yeah.
And that relates massively to the world right now and what's going on now and what astrology says about all of that.
And that can activate a deeper sense of trusting, you know, that when you know, we can't control everything, but it's surrendering to the greater pool of magic, isn't it, really?
Exactly. When you think it's going wrong, there's something in it that's actually going right. Yeah. You know, there's an opportunity now for you to glimpse something that you couldn't before.
And we have to believe that the universe, whatever that means to anyone, is working for us.
Yeah. Well,
working, you know.
Well, this is it. I mean,
even though if the ego doesn't like it.
Well, an ego doesn't like it. An ego shouldn't like it, you know. Yeah. But the reality is, I mean, we had a conversation recently and, you know, you were talking about this idea that maybe, you know, the consciousness itself is evolving. Yeah. And if we just look at the zodiacal wheel and the conversation we just had, every stage is a dynamic response. It's constantly shifting because it's expressive, it's dynamic, it's alive. Well, so life shouldn't be about staying static and safe. It should be about evolving, and life and, you know, the movement of the planets and the constant shifting of energy is therefore constantly asking us to evolve. Yeah. And so, you know, right now you look at the world and you think, oh my God, it's all falling apart. It is. And guess what? It's supposed to. Yeah. And what's therefore being asked of us? Well, it's a time for us to dream up and envisage a new way of being.
And is that because on a deeper level, if we are looking at the signs of the zodiac, you know, there's all this talk that we are moving into the age of Aquarius?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I suppose, it's a whole new conversation, isn't it? Because we've just come out of the age of Pisces, or it's not like we're not just coming out of it from one day to the next, because it takes hundreds of years, this stuff, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
There's a lot of arguments and discussion amongst astrologers as to when this age of Aquarius begins, but undoubtedly on the 21st of December, so the equinox in 2020? Yeah, it was 2020. Jupiter and Saturn came together at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is the first degree of this new sign.
Wow.
These two Titan heavyweights meeting together. Saturn wanting form and structure and authority and discipline, and Jupiter wanting expansion and optimism and growth. And these, they're basically coming together and saying, okay, I want structure, you want to expand. How do we do this for the good of the collective?
Yeah.
The sign of Aquarius.
Yeah.
How do we use technology?
Do we get, are we moving out of this Piscean age, and I understand the Piscean age to be, the age of control and darkness and tyranny and all that kind of stuff. And, this age of Aquarius is more of the utopia.
I think that's a very optimistic view of things.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that Pisces as a sign represents, with every sign, there's the light and the shadow.
Is it Pisces that we've come out of?
I'm
right in saying that
we've been in, there's the age of Pisces, and that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And that is
thousands of years.
But if you take the character of Jesus and Christianity, the values there are very representative of Pisces.
Yeah.
But of course, with the shadow side, you've had this time when people's experience of the divine has had to go through the priest.
Yeah.
And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius, you're not going to rely on reading it in a book.
That's right.
You're going to experience it for yourself.
That's right.
You're not going to go through someone else and have them tell you what your relationship with the divine is. You're going to know that it's within you, and we'll each form our own divinity and religion. The same way, like in this conversation, I don't have the answers, and all I have is my experiences.
Yeah.
And I can draw my philosophies from that and share that with you, and then we interact and we grow from there. So there is this new energy being created in Aquarius, and Saturn is kind of almost, as you can see with what's happening in the world, there's like this desire to put limitations on the collective and enforce one way of thinking.
Because Saturn is seen as, it's Satan, isn't it?
Well,
So the
the
planet
thing
of Saturn,
Saturn is very much like hard work, discipline, and the ego doesn't like hard work and discipline, and therefore we don't like Saturn, right? And so Saturn we often experience as being cold, as being limitations, fear, death, coldness. But you can work with Saturn, and to some extent we do need. We need order and structure to some extent in life and in society, and Capricorn as a sign is very much is ruled over by Saturn.
Yeah,
and since 2008, but particularly in 2020, we've just had this absolutely insane alignment of planets, which have been basically doing a dance together known as death yoga. so if you're looking at the world and you're saying, it looks like the structures of society are breaking down, well, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. They are.
And that is in almost the alignments of the planets.
Yeah.
So we are looking at this now collectively. So we're going from the individual now.
Right.
Where we've spoke about, okay, we can read it, people's individual charts, and it's a great map.
Brilliant.
And we can use it for the benefits of our movements, and our endeavours. But then now talking collectively, I suppose that the big one is like, how things all started. We'll use COVID because you can look at big parts of you can look at the World War I, World War II,
absolutely.
Where's all this been? Do you know what I mean? The time of Jesus, whatever.
Yeah.
But let's then talk about collectively.
Yeah.
Because, well, I suppose, you know, the turn of the millennia, you know what I mean, 2000 or 2012, you know, these are big moments in astrology. Or
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at the news, you're getting a version of what's happening in the world. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a story being told to you that is very literal, or is probably one person's view of what's actually happening. It's obviously not the whole story. But then if you take the astrology, you get a different viewpoint as to what is, okay, this is the literal event. Well, what's the archetypal energy that's being expressed? What's the bigger mythological story taking place behind these mundane events?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, the classic example that astrologers always give is like 9/11, right? So, I mean, the symbology there was so on the nose, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Where you've got Pluto in the sign of Sagittarius, right? Now, the sign of Sagittarius, the glyph is like an arrow shooting through the sky, a plane, if you will, right? Pluto is the sign of destruction and transformation through crisis. Saturn, the sign of, as we've been talking about, form and structure, the planet of form and structure, was in the sign of Gemini. Twins. Wow. Or twin towers, form, structure. I mean,
the symbology, the synchronicity, that
right. And obviously that leads to some people saying like, well, someone who knew about this has created. That's a whole other story.
Absolutely.
But so then we get to 2008 and Pluto moves into Capricorn, and Capricorn as a sign is all about, as I've said, the institutions, banking, finance, governments, you know, anything that is organized. What happens in 2008? The financial crisis.
Yeah.
And also Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, anything it touches, it expands, had gone into Capricorn, which it only does once every 12 years. So you're going to see expansion of transformation, decay, crisis in the institutions that make up society. And this is something that happens once every 240 years, by the way. So this isn't, you know, astrology. You can't say like, yeah, well,
doesn't just happen willy-nilly overnight.
Yeah. And what's gone on in the world since that? Because Pluto is still in Capricorn. It's going to stay there till 2024. Well, we had the rise of, you know, shortly after this, you had Occupy Wall Street. Right. What was that all about? That was about people banding together, trying to think of new ways of doing things. Bitcoin was invented shortly after. You had the riots in 2011 in London. You had the Arab Spring all across the Arab world, you know, people taking to the streets, protesting, wanting change.
Yeah.
And then we come to 2020.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got Pluto, Jupiter, the South Node, Saturn.
And is it connected to numerology as well? I mean, that's a whole new map as well. You know, 2020.
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
I don't want to confuse any listeners right now.
Well, no, I mean, you confuse me. I mean, you know, that's something that I think you've probably got a better handle on me than the numerology. But I think all these things, you know, they're all related, and certainly astrology draws heavily on numerology.
So we've come to 2020, and then
so as I say, there was, you know, first of all, in 2019, there was this dance between the planets known as Death Yoga and Vedic astrology. And, you know, I knew this was all going on, and I was like, something big's going to happen.
Something's happening.
And nothing was happening. And I was like, this is really weird. And, of course, now we know something was happening.
Of course.
Know, whether it was behind the scenes in a lab or whether it was things were worse in China before we all found out about it. Things were happening.
Something was going down.
And then the final exact meeting of Pluto and I think it was Saturn in Capricorn was on January the 14th, 2020. And then literally 2 weeks later is when you had the big, you know, White House press conference and coronavirus became this huge thing. So as I say, we've got this thing unfolding in the skies, and you're seeing it being mirrored on Earth. So when, you know, Boris stands up and he says 3 weeks to flatten the curve, astrology tells you it ain't going to be 3 weeks, right? We're not going back to normal.
Yeah.
But that also doesn't mean that we simply surrender and say, oh, it's all in the God's hands. It's all, you know, astrology, you know, we can't do anything about it. No, we're supposed to be playing a part.
Yeah.
You know, and it is a time when if these fabric and institutions if it's all dying and if it's all going to hell, well, then that's where we need to be coming up with what comes next.
Yeah.
You know, we've had Saturn, as I say, in Aquarius, squaring Uranus in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus, Uranus awakening liberation to new values. Taurus, you know, what do you value? What do you need to be secure?
Yeah.
A challenging aspect towards Saturn in Aquarius, restriction, you know. I mean, and you can see if you look at the news that globally there is an attempt to put one story and one way of being on everyone. Well, how's that possible when, as Aquarius says, we're a collective? Yes, but we're a collective of individuals.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's taking place right now, and then this year in April, we have Neptune joining Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces, which is really an opportunity. I mean, the energy that describes is mass spiritual awakening, potentially.
Yeah.
But the shadow side is also, because of Neptune, and it can be illusion and confusion.
And is there always a shadow side?
To everything,
There's always a shadow.
It's a bit like,
you can't have light. You can't have dark without the light.
Of course, yeah. And it's not even to necessarily say like the shadow is bad or, you know, the light is good, because it's like all these experiences are all pushing consciousness forward.
Yes.
It's all creating evolution, right? Even through the pain and the struggles.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit like in a psychedelic experience where you have that moment where you think, I'm God.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, you're not wrong there, but like, don't take that thought too far.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of illusion and
you might
confusion.
put it in a straitjacket.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, you know, if we think potentially what could be going on in April, yes, there could be a lot of beautiful energy and group sharings, but there could also be the potential that, you know, maybe we're not quite reading things properly.
Yeah.
Maybe we're being given information that isn't quite true. Maybe there is a bit of, you know, mass hypnosis taking place. I find it really funny that, you know, we're coming closer and closer to this event, and this phrase has erupted into the consciousness of, what was it, mass formation psychosis, something like that. I mean, that's very much the shadow of Neptune and Jupiter.
You know, if we were to tap into this for a minute, you know, if we do feel like we're potentially being controlled, you know what I mean, and then no doubt the powers above, whatever that means to anyone, you know, or whoever they think they are above us or below us, is you know, they have the power of all these, you know, complex concepts, I suppose, you know what I mean, astrology, you know, symbology, you know, and potentially using this stuff against us. Do you know what I mean? As an astrologer, and as a human being, and a man who's been on a journey with himself, you know, through not just psychedelics, but with acting and obviously grief and everything else that comes with it. Are you optimistic about the future for us, David?
Yeah, I am. But I also, and I don't want to, you know, put any fear out there, but I do think, you know, there's going to be growing pains, right? And this is going to be a challenging time. I think you know, just take astrology away for a moment and just look at, like, you know, freedoms that have been given up through this process. Will we get them back? And what will it take to get them back? You know, but I am optimistic, because I think the point is, from my experiences with psychedelics life, I can see that whenever I've thought, like, actually there's no point to any of this, this is all just shit. Yeah. I may as well just not be here. Yeah. What's the point? What's the point in trying? Yeah. That actually then through that comes a whole awakening to something new, and that experience is I've had that experience because consciousness has been trying to help me evolve in more and more into
Yeah.
me. And so I can only assume that the same is true on a macro level.
Yeah.
And therefore, you know, whatever it is that humanity goes through in the coming years, it's all for a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and we are, I mean, we'll play a little game.
Yeah,
when,
absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
For everyone can play along at home and become an astrologer. But there's a big event happening in 2025, 2026, which I think could really be another sea change moment.
Yeah.
But a real moment where
Tipping
something
point, yeah.
something new and something potentially very beautiful emerges from the kind of darkness that we're all sort of
Yeah.
in at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, because of the virus, and also, you know, economic pain.
Yeah.
You know, you've only got to look at like inflation and energy prices, and people are suffering. Like,
Yeah.
really suffering.
And you know, I suppose, I mean, this conversation can go anywhere, because, you know, we're talking about things falling down, and even potentially, you know, money, you know, and you know, that monetized system, which is, you know, a dehydrated system, you know, coming into, what are we moving into? You know, the age of crypto, the age of,
Yeah.
you know, it's a digital age, you know,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, as a man, as a father, as a teacher, I think, you know, I'm definitely in the camp that I mean, I can only, again, come from my own experiences and the magic that I've experienced. But I still have doubts, and I still have fears, and I'm still suspicious about things, and I still question and try to reason with life. But it comes, for me, down to faith. You know what I mean? Just having some faith.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it, being in the world right now, is it easier to cope and to because you have a child and you have that responsibility and you have that root of love, or are the moments where it becomes almost more harder to look at?
I mean, I contemplate that, you know, I mean, I've been on the earth for 36 years or 37 years, and I think about even just how much things have changed in such a short space of time. You know what I mean? Last few years.
Yeah.
And I look at my child who's 4, and I wonder what life is going to look like when she's 50. Do you know what I mean? I wonder what life's going to look like when she's 50. And you know, I'd like to think that I'd, you know, that I'd be able to watch this child grow into her potential, you know what I mean? And for her to thrive. And I wish that so deeply on her life. But I also have to surrender to the fact that she has her own karmic ties. I'm only her guardian, you know, and she has her own karma. She has her own mission, her own purpose. And as a parent, I can only shine the light of almost loving detachment. You know, which is for me the most difficult thing in the world, because I'm so attached to this child, and to trust that, you know, she is guided by herself. She will be guided by something, the powers above, and to surrender that she is protected and connected and loved. But I'd be under no illusion that she will suffer. You know, she will suffer throughout her life at certain times. I wish that is minimal. But we all suffer, and I suppose suffering is a measure of our own perception as well. You know what I mean? It's just what one person's suffering is maybe somebody else's pleasure. You know what I mean?
Course,
so it's all a matter of perspective. And I think as a father, I would always guide my child back to, for me, it's the meditation. You know what I mean? And obviously to have certain maps of embodiment, movement, community, and morality.
Yeah.
And you know, things like yoga and whatever, nature, because these are our greatest teachers, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I think for me, I would always invite my child to have a relationship with the practice of meditation, because you have the direct experience, and inevitably you haven't direct experience of consciousness if you are persistent and if you're vigilant, and you know, and you can really surrender, you know, beyond your own limitations. You know, we do it now. You know, we of a morning we'll sit there and she's 4, and You know, we do something very simple.
Yeah.
And we just say, we put our hands, in our heart. We say, Holy Creator, great mystery, higher power, thank you for this day. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my mother and father. Thank you for my body. Thank you for my breath. And she's just given over. There's that sense of appreciation, and then then we say amen. And I'd like to think that she would have a communion every morning, a purposeful one, with something greater than her egoic self. You know what I mean? But at the same time, have a strong egoic identity in the world, which is her uniqueness. It's her own unique signature, and that's almost what I teach as well. Is not to be afraid of the ego, is to celebrate your ego.
Absolutely,
is to celebrate your uniqueness, but also there's my will, there's Martin's will, but there's thy will. You know what I mean? And there's surrender into something greater than Martin.
Yeah.
And I trust that when I'm holding space, not just for my child, but for people in Liverpool and beyond, that this information that I've experienced over a period of time can gracefully be transmitted for the benefit of other people having that experience of naturalness, nature, divinity, simplicity, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, thank you for the question. And I know we could sit here all night, and I know we do. We actually we sit together. We share great food. We like a couple of nice cold beers, don't we? And so I think before we just wrap it up, I know you've got a short.
Yeah. So basically, I just thought, just to kind of illustrate like how this process sort of works and what like an astrologer does. I've got some keywords for Saturn and for Neptune and for Pisces and Aries, and we'll throw them out there, and maybe we won't do it, but people can have a go at home and just sort of explore it, because on 20th of February 2026, so good while away, but it's coming up, and it's the next major thing that is on this comparative to what we've just gone through. Saturn is going to meet Neptune at the very end of the zodiac and the very start. So it's going to meet at the end of Pisces, the final sign of the zodiac, and then at 0 degrees Aries.
Wow.
So whatever it's going to be big.
Yeah.
So I'll read out a few key words, and then it's a case of just sort of you brainstorm, you put them together, and you start to think, well, how might that energy, what's being called into being through this? So Saturn, you've got death, discipline, form, structure, tradition, duty, lack, reality, sobriety. And then Neptune, dream, longing, mysticism, intoxication, vastness, supernatural, escapism, intuition. Pisces, sacrificial, idealistic, boundaryless, universality, egoless. Aries, pioneer, courage, enthusiasm, impulsive, energetic, ego-driven. So as I say, these two urges, as represented by Saturn and Neptune, are going to come together very, very close in Pisces, and therefore they're going to express themselves through that Piscean energy. But then they're going to meet exactly at 0 degrees of Aries. So I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if you just look at some of these words, Neptune is stronger than Saturn in Pisces, so it's kind of more likely to win the war when they blend. It's going to be more the Neptunian energy. So it's almost like the supernatural, the mystical finding form. Yeah. As well, as much as it's going to be the dissolution, the further continuation of the theme that we've been having of the dissolution of boundaries that is represented by Neptune. But then it's going to take place in Aries. So it is, there is the sort of potential here for, like, I guess you could say, I don't know, the birth of some sort of spiritual warrior, maybe. Yeah. This is, you basically take these words, you play with it, and you just sort of, and then obviously we will live to hopefully find out what emerges, what consciousness is asking of us.
Wow. because even words alone, the language alone, there's such a resonance with our being, isn't it? And with the nervous system. And so I want to thank you for sharing your story. I know there's a lot more in there, and I'm truly grateful to be able to express myself and share some of the moments I've had with astrology over the years. And it's for me, it has become a really a profound map for me to understand deeper layers of who I am and why I'm here, but also to pinpoint certain areas of my life that potentially need to be resolved or need to be let go of, and need to be compassionately taken care of. And I think I'm truly excited because you are now stepping up. And I know you are doing readings, personal one-to-one readings here in Liverpool. Moving into the spring and the summertime of 2022. You're going to start doing some potential like short courses on astrology, a planet yoga, which I think now more than ever, there is a lot of people that are out there that are looking for something, you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily in the churches anymore. It is in the yoga studios. It is the tarot card readings, and it is the astrology, and it is the the yoga and the meditation. So I'm truly excited for your journey, David, because I know what this means to you. I know how passionate you are, when it comes to all matters related to astrology. And it's and you put it together and you transmit it with such you're very eloquent, you know what I mean? You're a wordsmith. But it's authentic as well, and I'm grateful for all the readings you've gave me. And I look forward to continuing to deepen our connection and our journey. So if there's any final words you'd like to say to anyone tuning in?
I just want to say to you, like, as I say, that having been an actor and then walked away from all that, the idea that I'd ever sit in front of a camera and just expose myself in that way. But it is a testament to our friendship, but your energy as well. And as I say, that's sort of like celebrating yourself and wanting to see other people thrive. I really appreciate that. And, your friendship has meant a lot and is one of the reasons why I'm actually really getting comfortable with who I am and wanting to, share that with other people.
Lovely.
So thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so this is episode 20. I think it was a long one. And maybe it wasn't long enough. But I really just anyone listening to this, my intention is to just share some stories, to expose myself and to be vulnerable, and just have some like real conversations, but different conversations. So it opens your mind. It gives you maybe a platform or an avenue to explore yourself in deeper ways. And obviously today was really about astrology. It was about David's life, and I hope you can take home some golden nuggets with what we've shared today. So thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time for Creating Space. It'll be episode 21. I have no idea who's next and what we're going to share, but I always trust that the right people are coming along to share the right stories. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you all again very soon. Happy New Year. Bye for now. Creating Space is sponsored by the Scouse Guru app, an all-purpose meditation app that feeds into all your needs, developing peace of mind, increasing mental focus, lowering stress levels while discovering inner stillness, awakening your potential and educating you on all matters related to human behaviour and personal development. Download the app for free on the App Store or get it on Google Play today.